So my second recommendation is this, and it's a really serious one, and I would say this to any council in the country because none of them do it right, with respect. Figures presented should be clear, complete, consistent and comprehensible to councillors and to the public. I think, because I've read the consultation document, it's not clear what the budget is. And therefore, the consultation document doesn't give you a picture of how money is spent. And I think that's an issue. And I think that councillors, if I were a councillor, I would say, please will you explain to me, will you reconcile the two figures? Please will you provide a reconciliation, this is the word that any sort of accountant would use, businessman would use, between the two different figures, explaining what the expenditures are that account for the difference in the two. I'm not suggesting for a minute that this is money that doesn't get spent or anything like that. All I'm saying is there isn't a clear explanation of how it is being spent. And I say in my final sentence, without this, it's very difficult for any councillor to make an informed decision about how a proposed cut should be taken. And it's very hard for them to ask you to participate, as they must, and they should and they have, to participate in a judgment about the right way to make that cut if they haven't given you the correct information. Are you with me? Okay. Thanks, Terry. Now, I tell you, I'll be absolutely candid, I was surprised at these figures because I watched the figures from around the country. Somerset is notorious for having a very low libraries budget. Everybody says it. The amount of money per head of population is about £13, and it is one of the lowest among county councils in the country. So I was expecting to find that the budget would be quite a squeeze. In fact, I was rather putting my head on the line when I said I'd get involved in this, because I had been quoted in the newspapers a few weeks ago saying that I suspected that any council in the country, I could show how you could take a third out of the budget, a third, not a quarter, and not have any bad effect on the library service at all. And it was a rather dangerous thing to say, because there are bound to be some councils where it's a bit more difficult, and I thought Somerset was going to be one of them. I am surprised at the level of back office costs here. It's a very high figure. And one of the confirmations of it which worries me more is that the cost of staffing is reported in CITFA. It's very hard to get at the detail, but the cost of staffing is reported in CITFA. And I don't know if you can follow my kind of confirmation to myself that I was right about what I was seeing, was that in CITFA it reports the staff cost of the staff employed in the library service, not in the overhead, it's council generally, but actually by the library service, and it's reporting 4.3, 4.1, 4.1 million, 4.2 million. But from the figures that were provided after the consultation, the 34 libraries, the staff cost in them is only 2.2 million. In other words, the other 2.1 million is in the office, right? That to me was a sort of confirmation that what I'm saying is correct. Thanks, Tony. Now, we're all weary of hearing about cuts and how they're going to ruin all the services. What I want to try and show you is that there's another way of approaching this problem. And you kindly mentioned this work that we had done in Hillingdon, which is now 3 or 4 years ago. It's a long programme that they're doing there. It's going to take 6 or 7 years to finish. But they listened to what I was saying about these costs. The councillor there, and it's really important to understand how the really central role that a councillor takes in this. But the councillor said, I understand, and I understand that this is an issue which actually affects many departments in the council, not just the libraries people themselves. It affects the property department, it affects the HR department, it affects the computing department. We as the cabinet, this is a word you've become familiar with in some sense, the cabinet will take control of a project to improve the library service, and we will take the cuts that you're talking about. And I'll just show you some pictures. Should I call this the charity shop look? It's my unkind way of describing what most public libraries in the country look like. You're quite familiar with that. This is a library in West Drayton in West London, which is not the nicest part of the world, not nearly as nice as Glastonbury. I'm absolutely certain of that. But it's a very functional library, And it's typical. Just watch that window because it comes back in a few minutes' time. Just keep that shape of that window. And thanks. Tony, next one. Everyone paints the walls in the children's department, puts a coloured colours down. It's not the end of the world. Okay, Tony, thanks. Now, within my office costs, my non-frontline costs, there are two big elements that make up that cost. Now, I have no idea in Somerset, what they are or how they are, but you need to find out. But this isn't Somerset. And it isn't actually Hillingdon, but it's a very typical kind of management structure. Hillingdon had slightly different names, but it more or less amounted to this. And you can't read what it says, but I'll tell you. At the top is the councillor, who is the person responsible for the public library service. And then you will have a director who has several areas of responsibility. The directors are the senior managers of the council. And then within whichever directorate libraries falls, there will be probably a head of culture or someone a name with several functions. Then the chief librarian or head of library and information service, or whatever it's called. And then there will be some kind of senior management team, they call it, which will be partly operational. There will be a team of librarians who normally operate as a slightly different thing from the operations team. They provide the expertise of being professional librarians. There won't be many of them, but there will be some. And then there's always a sort of distribution function going on, which I'll show you a bit more detail about, and a place where they process books, which means sticking books and things, or cataloguing, whatever it is. But it's a point where the books are kind of arrive and then they go out again. And then there's generally some kind of computing function which is particular to libraries. And then again down below that there's some kind of area management operation, and some all kinds of things, and then. But by the time you get to the library manager, the person is not very important at all and has really got very little control over actually what happens in their library or in their town, because they've been told by so many people what to do by that point. All they're there for really is to lock the door at night. And then you've got the staff, and they're the people you actually meet. They're the nice people who, kind of you get to know every day. They're the ones who use, who are the heart and soul of the library service, to be frank. It's a very big structure, if I may say so. And the other bit of library management, which is jolly expensive, believe me, because you heard my background. I kind of, if a library orders a book, it comes through an amazing number of places to get to the library. And this is a kind of typical arrangement. The council bibliographic service, say, orders a book. The order goes off probably to a library supplier. The library supplier gets it from a distributor, which is the sort of Penguin warehouse, if you like. They send it to a wholesaler. The wholesaler sends it back to the library supplier. The library supplier then sends it to the council's own little warehouse. In there it is then processed, and then they send it off to an individual library. Now, this is a library book. I can tell you these cost about £1 or 50p really to produce. But by the time you've sent them round the universe and everybody's had a go at putting them in a box and sticking, this has got 8 labels on it. This is Westminster, it's not Somerset. And that's mild by comparison with some. By the time everyone's stuck labels on it, this now what was it cost £1 that you might have bought for £4.99 or £5.99 in this shop, it's getting to cost about 20 quid. These supply chains are ridiculously expensive, and it's just a book, for Christ's sake,
Can I ask, why doesn't the
Can we just
counties go
Mr.
straight
Mayor.
to the publishers?
Sorry? Yeah, well, I'm going to come to that. Mr. Mayor, forgive me. You're ahead of me, that's right.
Okay.
Only the mayor is allowed to interrupt yourself. Thanks, Tony. Now, in the kind of asking, we need to know more about this 2.98 or this 3.98 million pounds. We don't know anything about it, and we need to. And the only bits of information that seemed to be, I've seemed to have seen, was one that said the cost of bibliographic system and systems service, which is servicing a number of councils, which I said, has a cost of 1.23 million. I don't know what is quite included in that or not. I know, but however, that the money that comes back from the other councils is about 320,000 because that appears in SIPFA. So I don't know whether I'm justified or not in deducting one from the other, but if the only figures that one can see, and it's up to the council to explain, no, so I'm going to keep talking to because otherwise you can keep the question. Means that about £900,000 appears from any information we had to be spent. And how many books is it handling? Well, books and DVDs, about £380,000 worth. In other words, we're spending possibly £900,000 to handle £380,000 worth of books. This possibility isn't that you think we might be able to find a cheaper way of doing this. Are you with me? You understand? Okay. Rather than shut the libraries, for goodness sake. Terry, thank you.